Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast, the Philly Autism Advocacy Podcast. My name is Constance Jones. My son's name is Austin. He is 4 years old and he has autism. He was diagnosed earlier this year. So I started this podcast to push a petition that I started, me and a couple other parents in a Facebook group page that I'll add for you guys in case you guys want to add it. We started a petition to start a public school for children with autism in Philadelphia. There are other ways that we can help our children by sending them pretty much to other schools, to counties. There is a private school that is $60K a year. There are other options, but we would like to have an option of a public school. We feel like that's the best one. So this journey for me, I learned that health and education is really important, especially when you have a child with autism. Health is extremely important. So, with that being said, I'm really excited to have our speaker here with us. Her name is Niki Williams. She is the founder of the Health Terrain, of the Health Terrain Educational Consultants. I'll put that website up for you guys to see. She's also the founder of the Facebook group page, Biomedical Families or Biomedical Beginnings, the Black Autism Family. And oops, let me go here. And she's also a volunteer coordinator for TACA, the Autism Community in Action. So we've got a long list there. And once again, this is Niki Williams, and thank you for coming on. And yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I know we've had some technical difficulties this evening, but when it comes to educating families, I give up all my time if I need to. So here we are. I'm glad that things are sounding a little better. So yeah, I am the owner of the Health Terrain, a business I started that was inspired by my son, Michael, who is now 12 years old. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. And he actually has epilepsy as well, which he was diagnosed with a year after his autism diagnosis. By trade, I'm a nurse. So when my son regressed into autism and started having all of these symptoms, I had to really dive in and see what was happening with not only my son, but a lot of the children that, statistically, the numbers were just growing and growing. So, Michael inspired me to start the Health Terrain, my business that I see clients personally. And then I give back both through Biomedical Beginnings for Black autism families, educating families of color on how to intervene biomedically with their child's autism to improve their overall function. And through the Autism Community in Action, I run the Massachusetts chapter. So I host events and coffee talks and just do some more education. So happy to be here today.
Yes, like as I said, that is of awesome things. So really happy about that. So I actually have a question. You said you found out when he was 2 years old, and then a year after that, you found out about the epilepsy. So at what point, I guess, did you like start the Health Terrain, or were you able to, I guess, be active? Because I know when you first find out about a diagnosis, like it probably takes, I guess, a little while to kind of take it all in, and then when you say, okay, I'm doing this now.
Yeah. So the Health Terrain kind of came after, once I really had my feet planted, solid in the ground and had a strong background, both educationally and professionally, to be able to advise families and educate families. But when my son was diagnosed, I was just like any other parent. I didn't even, bring my nursing background into those doctor's visits initially. I was, a parent who felt like a fish out of water, just like anyone else whose child is diagnosed. And the epilepsy, it was interesting. They were sort of in denial. My son has what's called absent seizures initially, and they kind of just stares off into space for a second and then comes back. And they were like, oh, well, kids with autism ignore you. And we were like, yeah, no, this isn't ignoring. This is something different. And so it took some time. Despite those absent seizures being present right around the time of his diagnosis, I still wasn't able to make any headway with the doctors. So the Health Terrain came back in about 2019, I said I need to make money because, as you know, it's very difficult to work when you have a child with autism. And Michael was, getting out of school at 2 o'clock, and I'm a nurse. Nurses do 8-hour shifts, and that just was impossible for me. Therapy and all the other things we have to attend to. So I decided to start the business. And another reason that I started this business is because a lot of our children end up on supplements when they start seeing doctors, or just, I'll say, hey, ask your pediatrician about omega-3 and how it could help. The supplements are very, very expensive. And I wanted to be able to provide supplements from not Amazon, a good quality distributor at the lowest cost possible. So through the health terrain, people are able to enroll in my supplement store with their email for free and access supplements that if you go to your local health food store, you're going to see they're marked down tremendously, and they're coming direct from the manufacturer, not sitting in someone's warehouse.
Yeah. Wow. See, I love it. That's awesome. All the natural stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so actually, that's great because you answered one of my questions. So when you found out, I guess you say you're a nurse pretty much already, so you kind of had some resources, but how was it, I guess, reaching out and looking for resources? Were you able to find other parents like that you could talk to, or how did you at that time, I guess, because I'm not sure if there were really like Facebook. I feel like Facebook group things are kind of newer now. I know I just started using Facebook group pages. So I'm guessing like when he was 2 or 3, like how was getting those connections? Because I'm guessing it was a little more difficult than now.
Yes. So it was actually through the organization TACA, the Autism Community in Action. We at that time had Yahoo groups. So believe it or not, Yahoo had these groups, and they were almost like blogs where you could ask questions and people would answer. Similar to the Facebook groups, but a little more archaic than how Facebook has a flow to it, real time. Yeah. So initially, that's how we were able to start to gather resources. And Taka does a wonderful job. I mean, and even right now, their website has everything that you need to know. And that's where I really began educating myself and getting the resources to bring back to doctors and, kind of put my foot down and say, hey, we know that there are at least, 4.9 other medical diagnoses that these kids carry. Why aren't we doing anything about it? You say your kid is constipated, they say, well, kids with autism have constipation. You say your kid doesn't sleep, they say, well, kids with autism don't sleep. And it was similar with the seizures. Oh, my son's staring off into space. Well, kids with autism ignore you. I couldn't, I was the one who was printing out the research studies, going on to PubMed and showing up in the doctor's office, fired the pediatricians, went through 5 neurologists, just because they were not meeting me where I was at when I was standing there with hard evidence in my hand. So I originally, started being educated through TACA, connecting with parents in that way with the Yahoo groups, and ultimately, just meeting up with people in person by attending TACA meetings or hosting them. And then eventually I became the Massachusetts coordinator, and I started hosting them and reaching out to anyone that I could to provide this education to them. Because it's so important that we acknowledge that, yes, autism is a condition of neurodiversity, but there are other underlying health concerns that have to be addressed if you want your child to thrive and, be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
Even with those neurodiverse changes.
And I feel like that's what makes it a spectrum, I guess, because of all those things that you said that is different in each person.
Right.
That creates kind of their own, what the autism is for them. That's why you can't really put your finger on that.
Right. You can't, because they're even, when I hear, oh, a doctor has a protocol. I mean, there's no protocol. You
Yeah.
have to do the labs, look at the physiology, and address what is not within normal limits or at optimal levels, like I, like to explain to people. So to explain that a little bit further, we can take something simple like vitamin D.
Yeah.
If you go and have a vitamin D test and you get the lab result back, they're going to tell you that the normal range is somewhere between 25 and 85. And you might come back at 30. And the doctor will say, your vitamin D level is normal. Yes, it falls within the normal range, but is 30 optimal? No, 60 or 70 is optimal. And so, getting down to the nitty gritty like that when it comes to what's going on with the kids from a body standpoint is really how we improve their health.
Wow. As you were saying that, I'm just looking at my son's kind of blood test results and all those results, and I'm like, he was kind of on the low side of those things, but they never really mentioned like because of that range there. That's just like, oh, but he's usually always on the low part of like those ranges, but they never talk about like trying to get it higher.
Right, right. And I mean, when you think about it, who generally goes in for those tests, right? How often is a doctor checking a vitamin D level on a child?
Right.
Not often. So those ranges are established by laboratories based on societal norms, and then you think about it even further, who's generally getting blood tests? People who aren't well. So we're basing those normal levels on people who are unwell.
Yeah. Breaking it down. This is what I said to the doctor.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, what my area of expertise is. I'm a nurse, but my undergraduate degree is in health education and wellness. So I like to take that complex information and bring it down to the level that people who don't have a medical background can understand, because otherwise, it's kind of that same feeling you get when you leave the doctor's office. You're like, okay, what now? And so I like to break it down, help the parent understand the physiology, help them understand what's happening, and then educate them on how to go back and have those discussions with the doctor about, what could be going on. And TACA does a great job of that. They have a whole web page, why does my child do this or that? And they'll, hyperactivity, they're like, MSG, GABA levels, which is the excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. So once you start to really look at your child, what is classifying them as autism, right? Is it that they're not speaking? Is it that they're stimming? Is it that they're sensory sensitive or sensory seeking? And then you go and you look up, sensory seeking, and you have that kind of biomedical perspective of what sensory seeking is typically caused by. You can then start to change things in the environment and have conversations with the doctor that reduces that sensory seeking behavior. And ultimately, your child's has improved. And we know when the kid starts to do better, the whole family does better.
Yeah.
Autism is a family diagnosis. It's not just about the child, because everything is impacted, from our finances to our quality of life, our social lives, everything.
I love it. You actually kind of answered the next question, but I guess to go more in depth, if you would have any advice for like, new parents who, like, say for instance, is not getting any of these nutritional kind of facts. Like, I was on a Facebook group page earlier, and I think a mom was talking about how she wanted to like kind of start a diet, or she felt like milk really wasn't fitting well with her child. So I guess what advice would you have for parents that kind of want to start stuff maybe without the doctors, or you know or maybe talk to the doctors and then do it, but if the doctors aren't agreeing, like what advice would you have like moving forward for those parents?
So one of the things I like to tell parents is that if you grew up and you didn't grow up with the best diet, and don't think twice about feeding your kid Doritos and hot dogs and McDonald's and fast food on a consistent basis, right? What do they do when they go in the doctors? How many vegetables are they eating? How many fruits are they eating? You don't say, oh, my kid only eats hot dogs and Doritos, for lunch every day. So, it's the same type of concept. If you're going to feed your kid healthy, you don't need the doctor to sign off on that. Just like you don't need the doctor to sign off on you giving your kid McDonald's, because either way, they're going to have something to say. I've seen this all along where the doctors are like, oh, well, autism is difficult enough. If you change their diet, you're setting yourself up for more struggle. And it's like, absolutely not. That's the wrong message to be sending. What I love about Taka is that Taka has web pages that will help you get started. The reasons to go gluten and casein free. And that's one of the main things I tell parents. Your child should come off of gluten and they should come off of dairy if they have autism. And Taka breaks it down. They tell you exactly why. And I mean, this might sound a little bit, out there to some people, but in our body, we have these receptors. And if a person were to take opioids, like, a pain medication or even a street narcotic, right, that's considered an opioid, where that opioid attaches those receptors is the same receptors that the gluten and the casein protein goes and attaches to. So we know adults, right? How much do we, love pizza? We love our carbs. We love our cheese. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because when we eat it, it attaches to those pleasure receptors. And kids with autism, they're struggling in ways that we can't quite even put our finger on. So when they eat those foods, it gives them comfort. It gives them pleasure. But like anything else, too much of something isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's where I advise a lot of parents to start. And on that Taka website, they have, the reasons to go gluten-free, going gluten and casein-free in 10 weeks, gluten casein-free on a budget. So if, eating all organic and whole foods is not, in your budget, they give you resources to do it. And they, break down the reasons why you should do it. That's, my first step. And then be autonomous. That's your child. That's not the pediatrician's child. They don't bring that child home. You live with that child every day. And believe me when I say, I know kids with autism are picky eaters. That's another webpage that you can get on the Taka website. Picky eaters. They are picky eaters. But once you start to transition that diet, you will see that they will open up. And it can be a slow process. For instance, if the child loves milk and you want to transition that child to almond milk or hemp milk or rice milk or oat milk, all the other milks that are available aside from dairy, which is really the problem. It's little by little. Maybe you give them this much of their regular milk and this much of the oat milk. And little by little, you start to add more of the better milk, and you can transition the child. So it takes resilience as a parent to make those changes within your home.
It's like you're explaining my
son. One other thing that we know that impacts our kids, a lot of people know that our kids are prone to toxic overload in their bodies. So they tend to hold on to toxicity a lot more than the average person. And I make the analogy of like, we're not painters, but if we went and we painted all day long, how's our head going to feel that night, the next morning, right? We're not going to quite feel ourselves. And sometimes the toxins in the environment, the Febreze you spray or the plugins in the wall, or even soaps and shampoos, the fragrances, can give our kids kind of that feeling like they've been painting all day. And so looking at websites like the Environmental Working Group, where you can plug in any chemical, any food, and they tell you the level of toxicity, and slowly starting to make changes within your home, your dish soap, your laundry soap, your shampoos and lotions, and reduce that toxic burden that you're putting into that child's body, you'll see slight improvements. And it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. Your child's not going to wake up and not have autism one day. My son's 12. He still very much has autism, but his functional level is so far away from where we once thought we would be. Just by dietary changes, switching up, the toxic products in our environment, and seeing a doctor that specializes in autism.
And that's the MAPS doctor, correct?
MAPS doctors, yep. So medmaps.org is a website that people can go to. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, they have a clinician directory and you can find a doctor in your state. Many doctors do telehealth, but the hard part is that a lot of them don't take insurance. So that's where it gets a little bit tough. TACA does offer scholarships though. So they will offer scholarships at times for supplements, scholarships to see MAPS doctors. And if your child doesn't have state insurance and they have private insurance, sometimes you can see doctors that are called functional medicine doctors and they will take that insurance. For us, when we first got started, we had the same financial challenges that a lot of families have. We were a family of 6. And I just paid out of pocket for the office visit, which was like $300 for the functional medicine doctor. And then they were able to give me an order to go do the labs with my insurance. So little, things like that. It doesn't have to be that $2,500 or $1,200 that a MAPS doctor is going to quote you when you call to schedule the appointment. But I will tell you, they are worth every dime. Because your child's future, is really in the initiative that you take both medically and then, interventional behavior, speech and OT and ABA and the things that are appropriate for your child. Combining those two, you are giving your child the best chance.
Yeah. And I feel like also the best things in life are usually not free. And so I'm just saying, if they're not free, it's probably a reason why,
Yes, exactly. So just, taking those steps really can help. And joining the groups, TACA has a Facebook group. If you're a family, they do. It's called Hope and Help. And yes. And that group has grown. I mean, there's, probably 3 or 4 times the number of members that are in my biomedical beginning. So, my group happens to be a group for families of color, but, TACA's Facebook group is open to anyone of any culture, of any gender. And so you're able to get advice from people who have been on this journey. TACA has about 28 chapters, and we're all part of that group, and we all jump in and give advice to families. And then my group, both myself and Denise Smith, run that group, and she's a nurse as well. And this is all, free information, and it can feel like overload, but get yourself a notebook and just write things down. And I can remember I would write things down and I didn't understand what I was writing, but I was writing it down because it sounded important. And then as my knowledge base grew, when I flipped back into those earlier pages of that notebook, I'm like, I know what that means now. And then the implementation part becomes a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, I feel like everything that you said has really been an experience of all of us. You really, especially your son having epilepsy and my son having epilepsy. And I know when they first told me, they gave me like all these papers on like how to give him pretty much seizure medication, but they didn't really tell me anything about the type of seizures he had. So it's like, one of those things where I really had to, I think around that time with the epilepsy is when I found your page pretty much, because they made me have to take a class in order to, and this is why I had asked you these questions, but they made me take a class in order to change his diet. Like in order to put him on a certain, on like a keto diet. That's what they wanted me to start him off with. So I had to take a class for that because they told me, like my doctor told me that he die if I don't put him on medication and if I don't take this class to learn how to like change his diet a certain way. So I do feel like it was a lot of bullying pretty much that I was getting to do things with my son. So when you're kind of saying these things like, you don't need the doctors to do this, you don't need the doctors to do that, it's kind of like we got to unprogram ourselves because we we've been taught that we need them for so many things. But with my son's journey, my pediatrician hasn't helped me with anything. And that's the first step to those other people.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's kind of made us have to go back to more natural things and kind of trust ourselves and each other and our bodies and what our bodies
Yeah.
are telling us.
Yeah. And as parents, right? I mean, we know that mother's intuition is not fake. It is not fake. And if you are reading something and you just feel like, wow, like I get this feeling this could help my child, listen, if you can pick it up in CVS and Walgreens, as long as you're not doing it in combination with a bunch of things all at once, why not? Try a multivitamin. Why not, consider probiotic or omega-3 or some of the things that are, fairly benign. I mean, your child may get a little diarrhea and then you say, okay, maybe this isn't the right thing for them. But I can tell you there's so many moms on this journey. I mean, I have met at this point, I'd have to say close to 1 million because there's so many kids diagnosed. Who have just been autonomous in their decision making for their child, and they see improvements because they're changing their diet, they're forcing the doctors to listen, and just making decisions that ultimately are benefiting the entire family. Cleaning up the diet and cleaning up the home products, that helps everyone.
It does, because I've actually lost a lot of weight with my son's diet. And I haven't tried to lose weight, but you kind of don't have a choice because who wants to make all these meals for multiple meals for multiple people? No, we're all going to eat this gluten-free ground turkey pasta today. And it's going to be delicious.
Yep, absolutely. When I went gluten-free, I didn't even realize it was helping until I ate gluten again. And then I was like, oh, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and I'm able to quantify that experience of not eating it and what it's actually like. My son, he can't really, but a lot of times once you take them off and then you try to give it to them, you'll see. We just had somebody post about that in Biomedical Beginnings. You did? You saw that, right? She's like, I stand by the gluten-free, casein-free diet. I think the kid got some pizza. And Denise and I were right there with, some strategies because, infractions are going to happen. You can't half do it. You really can't half do it. You need to be 100% gluten-free, 100% dairy-free. And there's dairy in bread and there's dairy in products you wouldn't even expect it to be in. So you have to become very vigilant about, reading labels and things like that. But that's what we do, in Biomedical Beginnings. And that's what, Taka is there for. And my private business, the Health Terrain, I have clients who really want that one-to-one. I call it hand holding, or I walk you through, we video and I say, all right, show me your cabinets, let me, send you a link to this product, to this particular yogurt that you're using, or, hey, did you realize your seasonings all have MSG in them? I had a Taka mentor. This is a funny story. I had a Taka mentor. Taka has free mentors too, by the way. So there's tons of free resources. And you'll be paired with a parent who can help you, who you can, correspond with. But I remember I was so proud changing my son's diet. And I sent her a picture of my son sitting at the table eating his gluten-free, casein-free meal. And she said to me, your plates probably have lead in them. Those are like old school vintage plates. And I was like, so, there's things that we just don't know. And until we have somebody there to teach us and help us, and then what did I do? I threw out the plates. I went and bought glass plates. Just like, the Corningware, the Cornell ones. I went to Walmart. I bought 3 plates. They were like $3 a piece. I was like, well, these are Michael's plates. This is what he eats off of now. We were still absorbing the lead in the plates for a while, right? Until I could go and get a whole new set of dishes. Right. But, for our children, it's so important that we at least start taking steps for them and educating ourselves.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Okay. Oh, okay. So, well, I just want to say thank you for joining us. But also, I just want to say that I'm really appreciative of finding your page, and I'm gonna have to come in contact with Denise or reach out to her and thank her as well, like for you both kind of running that page. And I'm on it almost every day, so it's funny me and you
Great.
saw the same post, and we can laugh about it because if that doesn't show how much it helps women like me kind of get through the day with some things, like I'll look on there and change what I'm doing instantly just from
Yeah.
seeing what's on there. So,
Great.
so I just want to say thank you for me and for a lot of people who may not be able to say that to you, but thank you. we
Oh,
we
it's my
appreciate all the
pleasure.
information.
It's my pleasure. And, I think that, before we were live, you said that you felt like you were put here on this earth to do, the task that you have at hand with your school system and the whole educational system. And I feel the same way. I have all this background in healthcare, and then here I have this child who's, medically complex, in addition to this autism diagnosis. So I can understand how it's truly a give back. And I'm so grateful to be able to help families.
Oh, well, thank you. And I know you said that most likely you'd be able to join us again, because I'd love to be
Yes,
able to do this with you every once in a while, and we'll have some questions and probably some other people who would love to ask you some questions too and come on here.
sure. Yeah,
So
absolutely. We can hone in on certain things. We can talk diet, we can talk supplements, we can talk whatever you think your audience is interested in. So I'm here. I'm here to help you guys.
awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And so you can see this on the Facebook group page. I'm going to upload it, and it's going to be on YouTube and probably some other social media networks that I will put in the comments later on to let you know what platforms they will be on. But once again, thank you guys. All right.
Thank you.